Shalom, Salam Alaikum, peace and blessings, everyone. I'm Lale Tunser. This is Rabbi Lee Wiseman, and we're here from Universal God, Message of Peace. Today, we're going to be talking about freedom. Are we free to choose who we are? So, over to you, Rabbi Wiseman. What do you think about
Okay.
this?
So I'm going to offer, first of all, the simplest answer possible. Yes and no, which is usually the Jewish answer to pretty much everything. Yes and no. So there's a statement from Pirkei Avot, which is uh, a collection of the teachings of the rabbis of the first and second century. And it says, everything is in the hands of heaven except
Mm-hmm.
the fear of heaven. So now what does that mean? So that would seem to imply, so, well, okay, so everything is in the hands of heaven. I mean, everything that happens to you is somehow out of your control, except the fear of heaven, except those things which are in the ethical and moral realm. Because if we're honest with ourselves, there's so much about our life which we don't have control over, right? We don't have control over where we're born. We don't have control of who our parents are. We don't have control over what kind of family we grow up in, what kind of community we grow up in. We don't have control over many of the experiences that we have in the world. Um, all of the little accidents and um, all the little accidents and experiences that create who we are inside and outside. And there are many, many, many things over which we really don't have control. And those things create who we are. And some of them we're born with, right? We know about nature versus nurture. We have our DNA, we're born with certain characteristics. If you believe in astrology, we were just talking about that. You have mazal, you have the influence of the stars, right? And maybe that influences who you are. Uh, and then the question is okay, so if all these things are impinging on me, if all of these things are determining who I am, then where do I come into this? Where do I get to figure out who I am? And the rabbi said, when it comes to Yirat Shamayim, when it comes to your fear of heaven, when it comes to your own relationship with God and with your own moral being, that's where you get to make the decisions. So if you think about it this way. Um, let's suppose, let's suppose somebody wants to get married. Okay, let's say somebody wants to get married. So if you think about it, who's your marriage choice? Well, my marriage choice is little over half the population of the world. Wow, that's amazing. Wow, boy, do I have free choice. Boy, I have so many choices to make. Wow. Then you say, well, wait a second. Of those, of that 52% of the world's population, how many of that 50%, 52%, are kind of in my age range? Okay, so maybe 25%. Okay, as I get older, it gets smaller and smaller. Okay, so say 25%. Um, and then I think to myself, wait a second, wait. How many of them am I going to actually encounter or meet in the course of my lifetime? A couple thousand. Okay, so of the couple thousand I'm going to meet, how many of them are going to be right? And finally, right, I'm going to have a choice between 50, right? So I went from half the population of the world to 50. And that's my range of choice. And the same thing happens with everything else. While many, many, many things are determined, there comes a point at which you actually do have a choice. So while there's a lot that's about me that's predetermined, right? I have certain characteristics which I inherited from my parents. I have certain characteristics that I've developed because of my experience. Maybe I have certain characteristics because of my astrological configuration. I have all those things, and even with all of that, right? Even with all of that, there are the areas in which I do get to decide, and those areas allow me to create myself. They allow me to create myself, even to the extent. Interesting. The rabbis say, it says, "Ein mazal Yisrael." It says, for Yisrael, right? For those people who struggle with God, there is no mazal. There is no astrological influence. But they
Mhm.
talk about mazal all the time. They talk about astrological influence all the time. So what's the point? It says, well, because it says, yes. So let's say those things impinge on you, but there's a way of overcoming them. Right? That there's, right? So even if you have the influence of the stars, and even if you have the influence of your DNA, and even if you have the influence of your environment, and even if all those things are there, they're real, and they're real and they're important, and we don't discount them. Within that narrow space of
Mhm.
moral decision making, that's where you have your choice, and that's where you can make who you are. That's who you can make who you are. Now, there's some things you may not be able to change about yourself, but there are many things that you can change about yourself. As long as you're working within that area. Now, you can do everything you can to make that area wider, right? Part
Mhm.
of it is being aware of what impinges on you, right? So if you've had experiences which are traumatic, for example, um, or or you have family issues that deeply affect you. Being aware of those things, allows you to be able to maneuver within them in such a way as to be able to change yourself, even to be able to transform those things. When in the Torah, um,
Mhm.
when Abraham is told to leave Iraq, God says to him, Lech lecha, go to yourself. Go to yourself. It says, leave. It says, leave your birthplace, leave that and leave the house of your father, and leave your homeland. So the rabbis ask a question. Says, well, so why don't you just say, leave here, leave home? Right? Why
Mhm.
does it have to say your birthplace, the home of your father, right? Your homeland? It says, why the three different things? It's because all those things have an impact on you, right? Every country has its culture that has an impact on you. Every family has its impact. Your birth, where you're born, has an impact on you. And so God is saying to him, you're going to have to let that stuff go. Lech lecha, to go to yourself, to be truly who you are supposed to be, there's going to be a lot of things you have to let go. So, so part of choosing who you want to be is going to be addressing those things that impinge on you and letting them go and saying, okay, where is my authentic self, and making the decisions in the areas where you can make decisions. So that was rather
Wow.
a long answer, but
No, that
that
was
was
amazing.
that was basically yes and no, but long.
It's an amazing answer, and I think yeah, I think that was a great summary of of everything that I wanted to ask you actually.
Sorry.
Um, so okay, so maybe we could go into some of those things that you've mentioned in a bit more detail. Um, so what, okay, so many of us are feeling trapped in within the confines of labels and who we think we are. We might be aware that our past traumas or past experiences have shaped who we think we are.
Hmm.
And many of us find it difficult to, you know, go to ourself or our true authentic self or try to uncover all of that. So
Hmm.
I so how can we, Abraham obviously he had faith. Is it faith that we need? Do we need to believe in our potential? and the potential in our creator, potential for God to help us break free from that? Or is there another way of finding the strength to not doubt our ability to break free from those confines and go to, the essence of who we really are? What is it that stops people from doing what Abraham did?
Well, first of all, I don't want, I wouldn't say some people, I would say everybody. I
Mhm.
think everybody, this is a universal, I think there's a universal human challenge. And um, you know, the question of why Abraham, right, is a very good question. Nobody can really answer. Yeah, well, why this guy of all the people in the world? Why this guy of all the people in the world? And the rabbis discuss it, and they come up with stories, and it's not exactly clear. But the one thing that we know is that when God says Lech Lecha, he says, go to yourself,
Mm.
right? Go to yourself, and he says to the place that I will show you. And
Mm.
I think part of it, I think the first step is the willingness to deal with uncertainty,
Yes.
and to understand that it is all uncertain, right?
Hmm.
It's all uncertain. If we wanted to try to we wanted to try to make it so that, we know how everything is going to turn out, and we know how everything is going to be, and where it's that's going to be impossible. One is to understand that you're going into it's a
Yeah.
quest to the
Mm.
unknown, you know, and
Mhm.
to be all right with that, and to say, okay, I don't know exactly where this leads, you know.
So
Um,
yeah, exactly. And I think people are afraid because it's fear, isn't it? It's fear of the unknown. It's fear of the darkness of the unknown. It's fear of loneliness. It's fear of being vulnerable. It's fear of failure. It's fear of loss, fear of it's just fear. I think it's fear, isn't it? That's what
yeah,
stops us. And it's doubt, it's self-doubt, and it's sort of not having I think Jesus said, didn't he, if you believe you can move mountains.
yes,
These mountains are like, I see these mountains to be within ourselves, and our ego and our greed and our lust and envy and all the selfish desires that prevent us from actually being free to be who we really are meant to be. And in society, we see, people talk about freedom, and we sometimes imagine freedom to be the ability to do whatever you want, whenever you want, say
right,
whatever you want,
right,
hurtful it is, however, to somebody else, however much harm your behavior causes to someone else, however much it causes breakdown in
right.
relationship, however much it causes harm to yourself. People want to be free to do these things. But what is true freedom? Because without rules, which sometimes make people feel trapped, oppressed, you know, without these rules, can we truly be free? Um, that's a question, because actually, to be truly free, surely we have to channel that energy in a way that can allow us to um come to that freedom. And what's this about?
Yeah, I think freedom. I've been thinking about this a lot lately. We in America now, of course, we just came off of an election, and everybody's thinking about, what is our society supposed to look like, and kind of we're in a kind of contemplative moment when it comes to things like this. And freedom. Think think about music, okay? So if I just made music in any way that I wanted, let's just say, I just took an instrument and I just kind of started blamming away at the instrument, chances are it would not be very pleasant, right? What makes music pleasant um, is actually the rules of music, right? It's doing things in a playing in a harmonious way, and there are ways of learning how to do that. There's a discipline to that. And within that discipline, of course, you can do all sorts of magnificent things. You can make wonderful music, right? Within that. And even if you and if you want to break the discipline, right? You can do surprising things, right? And those can also be really interesting. But that also depends on the rules. So so rules are not necessarily is not necessarily the opposite of freedom, but they're a way of channeling freedom so that it can be more harmonious and more beautiful. And when it comes to human life, those rules can help kind of guide us and give us, the kind of serenity that we need, to be able to kind of, deal with our real selves. As long as, and the danger, of course, is also that they become to replace our real selves, right?
Mm.
You
Yeah.
know, that we become the uniform, right? So you dress up, here I am with here I am with my head covering and my beard and whatever else. If I think this is me, then I'm in big trouble, right? If I wake up in the morning and I look at myself and say, "Oh, there I am, religious guy." Okay, if that, and that's all I need, then I'm in big trouble because there's no chance that I'm ever going to, find anything there. The role can be very comforting, so comforting that it can become its own own prison. So
Mm.
you want to make sure that make sure that the role doesn't become the prison. And
Mm.
um
Exactly. And I think religion, many people turn away from religion because they feel that it prevents you from really, it can sort of make you put you into a box, or and cause division between people, especially if you say I'm right and you're wrong and my
yeah,
rules
that's
are yours,
yeah.
you know. Um, but actually, like for example, Islam is, I guess it's many would describe it as a um achieving inner peace through the willing surrender to the higher will of our creator.
Hmm.
So one could look at that and say, well, actually, that sounds like you're choosing to be a slave. I want to be free, so why would I surrender to
Hmm.
a higher will? Why
Hmm.
can't I just do what I want to do? And I think that, scares people. But actually I would say that, as a Muslim, I found that by surrendering, by giving up, by trying to exchange my selfish desires of my body to serve a higher cause, and surrender to a higher will of a creator, even to the point where I don't even understand, that uncertainty perhaps sometimes of why am I doing this? It can actually set you free, because it frees you from being enslaved to those, base desires of greed, of, um, envy and lust and all these things that might otherwise trap a person into serving themselves. Instead, you serve other people, or because it helps you, frees you into a path of love and truth, and to incline to truth. And I think truth sets you free. I mean, I'm struggling myself. We all struggle. We're all humans. We all have these battles. But I think we're all going to be slaves of something. We
Yeah.
all have to choose to worship something. So I think true freedom to me means being able to choose who or what it is I worship. Am I going to choose to worship my own thoughts, my own brain, my own mind, my own understanding? And am I just going to rely on my own understanding as a way to live my life according to what I want to do? Or am I going to actually choose my freedom to choose what I worship, to worship my creator, and follow follow his guidance, I guess a bit like how Abraham, is told to go to himself and that God will guide him to that place.
Hmm.
It's like setting your foot into the sea, before it parts,
Hmm.
and to the sea of uncertainty, but that God creates a path for you and shows you the way. And you trust that your provision will come each day. You trust, there's something freeing, really freeing about surrendering yourself to your creator who and you believe is looking after you as and you're trying your best to sort of, I think our job is to, what that means to me is seeking truth, higher truth, letting go of my understanding and my current whatever I think I know to be right. You let it go and you say there's always a higher truth, there's always a higher understanding. This is not it, this is not the end of the journey. And you seek it, you seek wisdom in everything. You try to see your creator in every person and everything around you. And once the truth is revealed to you because you're seeking it, then you've surrendered to a path of inclining towards doing that command. So, like, I guess Abraham, peace be upon him, he was tested with these commands, and many of them he didn't understand. Like, it was,
Right.
shocking,
Almost
really. Some of the things, like sacrificing your son
your
and
son, right? It's
exactly like
no
this does
sense.
not go with, if you just rely on your own logic and understanding, and that
Right.
just does not make sense. Um, and like in the Quran, for example, it tells us to not to blindly follow anything. So I'm sort of contradicting myself when I say this, but like, we're supposed to be seeking truth and we're supposed to be asking questions, because if you don't ask questions of where did this come from, you're not supposed to just blindly follow your father's religion, because it might be wrong or it might not be according to a higher path of truth. And actually, we're encouraged in the Quran to seek truth yourself directly with your creator. Also seek truth, he can reveal that through, rabbis or scholars or other people that you talk to and everything around you in every interaction. Um, Especially if you have doubt. So doubt can be a good thing because it can actually lead you to asking questions to seek higher truth, because without it, we wouldn't be inclined to do that. And then you can be stuck. But once something is revealed to you and you're sure of its truth, and once that truth enters into your heart, then, and you've made that declaration that is, you really believe that path or whatever it is, then there will always be parts within that journey of uncertainty. And actually, maybe that's the point where we then accept those uncertainties as truth, even if you don't yet understand it. So I
Yeah.
guess a bit like maybe when the Torah was given to the children of Israel, and they, it was revealed in a way that they knew it to be truth. And if it entered the heart, then there's things in there you just don't understand. Why are we doing these rules? Why are we following what are what is the logic in this commandment and that commandment? But should that stop you from actually doing it or not?
I think it's a little bit of a. I think it's a little bit of a. I think it's a little bit of a loop. It's a little bit of a feedback loop. On the one hand, you know, on the one hand, the greatest gift that God gave human beings is our seichel, our akal, right?
Mhm.
Our intellect and our ability to reason, our ability, and we should never give that up, right? Because that is the unique gift of being a human being. Okay, um, and so therefore always have to apply that, and it's important not to give that up and to feel like you have to sacrifice that. At the same time, as what you said is also true, and that is that when it comes to our servitude, we will serve something. By the way, I first heard that when I was 12 years old from a street preacher in Philadelphia, and I wish I had paid more attention because it's a great point. I mean, you always are going to serve something. Some people make their God their job. Some people make their job, their God, their own their whatever one of their desires. It's usually, people pick one that's kind of like that's their thing. And or there's lots of choices, and more and more in the world, and of things that you can make the ultimate concern and the center of your life. And I think what faith says is okay, well, if you're going to have to serve something, right? Serve what's meaningful, right? Serve what's going to bring good to you and going to bring good to the world. Serve what the creator of the universe, and who gave us ways of dealing with ourselves, that are wise, right? And follow that wisdom. And at the same time, right, don't turn off your brain, right? You have to be careful not to turn off your brain because that's your gift. I mean, it's like returning somebody gives you a beautiful watch, I guess that Rolex watch that you can take underwater and you can dive with it and you can take it, it works, anti-gravity, whatever, whatever it is, right? You don't want to give that back, right? Because it was a big gift. And that's what our intellect is. Um, and so it has to be used also in the service of God by studying, by trying to understand better, but always knowing that there are things that we don't know. We're finite beings, trying to relate to the infinite, and so there's always going to be an abyss of understanding between us and the Creator, and between us and what the Creator wants from us. Um, but also to understand that we started out by talking about transforming ourselves. To what extent can we create who we are? And much of what God wants us to do is to make ourselves into the best people we can possibly be. And we shouldn't think that being a servant means being a robot.
Mm.
Um, and that's a mistake that people can make. Both religious people and anti-religious people can make this mistake, right? Of thinking that what God wants me to be is a robot, right? He gives me a list of stuff to do. I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that stuff, and I'm kind of
But that's the job of
programmed.
the angels, isn't it? It's the job of the angels to
Right.
be
If
robots.
you right, if you wanted robots, he already had robots.
Exactly. So the thing is that, we as human beings, what comes with it, what comes with being in a physical body are these emotions, are these desires of greed and envy and lust and sloth and all the fears and the sorrows and the anger and the vengeance and all of these, you know, you could call them negative things, selfish
Mhm.
desires, but actually they're there for a purpose. I believe they're there for a purpose, and actually God wants us to serve him using those. So not to just get rid of them, because
Correct.
then we'd be like angels, but like to actually use them as well to serve our creator. So that is sort of breaking free from, I mean, I think that's where we have the choice, is to either allow that beast within us to control us and we worship the beast, or we ride on the beast, we choose to ride
Hmm.
on its back, and it helps us to get from A to B, or on our journey to serve our creator. And instead of killing the beast, which is what, sometimes, being in religious people can do this, is that they completely deprive themselves of these emotions, um and these desires. But is that actually what God wants us to do? Does he want us to stay in the top of a mountain in a cave all our lives? I don't think he does. He wants us to actually, there's a time for that, to meditate, to pray, to focus on, trying to have self-discipline, like fasting and prayer and stuff like this, to try and get the strength to then go back into the real world, into this physical world, and actually transform those. desires into serving our Creator. That's my understanding, but I don't know
Yeah,
what you think.
I also don't think that method works very well. Um,
Why
I,
not?
I I once met a guy who did a three. Okay, let me see if I can remember how this works. 3 year, 3 month, 3 day retreat. Okay, so for 3 years and 3 months and 3 days, he was completely alone in meditation. Okay, so he had a hermitage in the middle of the hills in the Himalayas, and he spent 3 years, 3 months, and 3 days. And at the end of the 3 years and 3 months and 3 days, so he had to go, he had to end his solitude. So he did this by walking into town, right? So he went, talked into to town,
Mhm.
um, and he goes to a store and and he has a few things that he wants to buy as part of his, okay, I'm going to go back into the world. I need to get soap and whatever else I need and to kind of bring myself back into the world. So he goes, and the guy behind the counter tries to cheat him. Okay, this is South Asia, so people bargain for things a lot. So he saw that he was a stranger, he didn't know who he was. So I gave him a higher price. And he completely lost his temper. He lost it. And then he thought to himself, so why did I sit for 3 years, 3 months, and 3 days? Right? It says, when now I seem to be exactly the same person I was, right? Because that's not the way that's not really a good way to change yourself, honestly. It is contemplation and serenity. There's definitely a place for it, and it has. I think that it's important for people to retreat, and it's I think it's a very good thing to do. Um,
But you're right. I think the way to do it is to actually immerse yourself in it, but hold on to that light and hold on to remembering your Creator who's with you. And actually, we fail, we make mistakes, but we're supposed to do these. We're supposed to fail sometimes. We're supposed to make mistakes as long as we constantly are learning and then transforming our failures, learning and then trying harder, but each time getting back up and trying. Then that's what gives us the strength to not do that again, is because we've experienced it, because we failed. um
and
you
if God wanted me to be a robot, he would have made me a robot.
exactly
You know,
exactly we come with these, we come with
if
these desires, we come with, that's just part of being human. So I would love to do like a weekly talk where we can actually go into each one of these and talk about how we can transform them. So
okay, as I told you before, I first have to figure out how, but I can make I can describe how to struggle with them. I can only describe struggles, not victories. But as far as struggles are concerned, I'm good at that. Um, Victories, I don't know if I can tell anybody how to get victories, but I can certainly tell them how to struggle.
well,
So
we're all struggling together, I think,
no
all of
struggling.
us.
Yeah.
So actually that's a beautiful thing. And I think it might help us to talk about it at least.
Okay. So
Mhm.
join us next week for the struggle.
Yeah, so we'll choose one of these desires that we sometimes struggle with, and perhaps we can do a weekly session on this and a discussion about it. Thank you everybody for watching. Peace and blessings with you all, and God bless you all. Shalom.
Hello.
Thank you. Bye bye.